Welcome to Blacks and Jews in Conversation. My name is Shannon Taylor. I'm the Executive Director of Blacks and Jews in Conversation. With us tonight is the Honorable Allan Marrus, Supreme Court, Kings County, Brooklyn, the homicide judge. So watch out there, all of you. You're tonight with the judge on trial on homicide. All the most celebrated judges are bowing their robes tonight to the master in court of the homicide trial, one of the hardest trials to do. And I might say that there are no mistrials in the court of Judge Marrus. There are either acquittals or convictions. And those who are guilty, they get a fair trial and they get justice. And as a brief introduction, he is a judge for over 25 years, God help him. Presided over more than 500 trials. 500 trials. I can't imagine one trial. 500 trials. He mentors and teaches the new judges, and it's a coup to be mentored by Judge Allan Marrus. He's written and lectured extensively about the law to lawyers, judges, law students, and myself. He's named one of the top New York judges consistently, and in at least 3 separate New York Post articles. And I might mention that our old friend, who's passed away, who used to take a fiendish pleasure in writing about the worst New York judges, took the same great pleasure in naming the few great New York judges, and always Allan Marrus was at the top of that list. In addition to his responsibilities as a jurist, he serves as a consultant to Lexis, one of the largest legal publishing companies. He writes and performs comedy at the judges' conferences, and of course with us, Blacks and Jews in Conversation, and not just Blacks and Jews in Conversation. He not only is the MC and has been at the Improv, at Stand Up New York, and at the Laugh Factory, but he has also written personal material for yours truly. He coaches a judges' softball. Now, I don't regard that with any distinction whatsoever. A judges' softball team, he'll have a chance for rebuttal on that, but we can put that aside, especially since he's a Yankee fan. He organizes and chairs many dinner events, including one recently honoring former Mayor Ed Koch. Now, there were at least 60 judges there, all appointed by Mayor Ed Koch, and it was Allan Marrus who was single-handedly picked to chair, coordinate, and then MC the event. He serves on the Board of Trustees at his temple, and we can pass that one over too, because I was involved with that event one night when at the request of my friend, and only because it was his request, I solicited some entertainers to come, and all they required was a tape, and it was too much, even with 3 tape recorders, to get a functioning tape. He can rebut that one as well. He serves as the Master of Ceremonies at Law Night at the Friars Club. On more than one occasion, we have put together jurists and attorneys to laugh with at the Friars Club, where he's been named as an honorary friar, and will be later tonight celebrating the end of the new year, and a very happy and healthy new year to all of you, and am I happy to see 2008 go. But we are ending on a very positive note. We have Judge Marrus's wonderful wife Iris here in the studio. She will not come on camera, though a distinguished performer and singer, soprano in her own right. She is not coming perhaps in the future. A very happy, healthy new year in 2009 to all of you. Now, Judge Marrus, any rebuttal before we begin?
How much time do I have for rebuttal, Shannon? There are so many things I need to rebut, but I'm only going to pick one. The most important, I'm a Met fan, not a Yankee fan. That's the most important thing I have to rebut. I'm going to rest on the rest of what you said. There's just too much for me to have to deal with. Your introduction is so loaded with content, and a lot of it is it's not exactly accurate, but I'm sure your audience will take it with a grain of salt.
Accuracy has never been an accusation made against me, and I've never been found guilty of accuracy, so I don't have to respond to that. As far as being a Met fan, well, at least I haven't followed them as closely as I have the Yankees, so we can pass that by too. With your background as a distinguished jurist and scholar, and as a writer for so many years and performer of comedy, how come you have refused your own TV show to serve in the trenches like me all these years?
Well, actually, I did have a TV show. I recorded in this same studio. It was called Law Talk New York. It was for the Bar Association, and we provided information to the community about all sorts of legal issues that might be helpful. It was public service, just like this program is. But actually, I'm waiting for some better offers. My friends Judy and Jerry Scheinlin, they did quite well with the offers they were made. And if anyone's out there watching and wants to make me an offer, I'm open to all suggestions.
Is there a connection between your work as a jurist and the comedy business, the comedy entertainment that you've done as a volunteer and pro bono? Do you see comedy functioning? Of course, we need comedy to survive, but do you see comedy in the judicial world?
Absolutely. There's definitely a connection between law and entertainment. There are so many television shows that people love to watch as entertainment that involve the law. We have all these court programs. Judges are ruling on all sorts of silly issues during the day in their courts. And in the courtroom itself, there's humor in everything that we do. Obviously, it's a serious matter, and I take it very seriously, but you have to laugh sometimes. There have been so many incidents. I had an attorney recently who appeared before me, and in the middle of an impassioned argument, his teeth fell out. He had a full set of false teeth. They fell on the floor, and it added new meaning to the term of a lawyer as a mouthpiece for his client. I'll tell you, it was quite remarkable. Years ago, a mouse ran across my courtroom, and a defendant threw his hat on the mouse, and we all watched in amazement as the hat ran across the courtroom. There have been so many other incidences with other judges that we talk about in court that were quite serious at the time, but you had to laugh. There was a judge who got a bad cup of coffee from a coffee vendor, and he was so angry he told his court officers to go out and arrest the coffee vendor, and they did. They brought him in handcuffs before the judge, who berated that coffee vendor for selling a lousy cup of coffee. The judge, of course, didn't last too much longer on the bench after he did that. We had another judge who was notorious for saying and doing silly things. He was about to bring in a jury panel into the courtroom, and one of his court officers told him, it's going to be Rosh Hashanah this week. Maybe some of the Jewish jurors won't want to serve on this case. And the judge said, no problem, I'll take care of it. And as the jurors walked into the courtroom, he yelled out, I want all Jews up against the wall. Well, you can imagine that story has lasted for many, many years. And it's that kind of stuff that keeps us going in court. We have serious business, but we always look for the light side to keep ourselves going.
Well, that's why it gave birth to one of the first nights at the Friars Club of funny times in the courthouse, where we had stand-up with the late, great Mel Sachs and our buddy Honorable Gene Schwartzwald, and attorneys from Pennsylvania through Connecticut, such as Allan Rothenberg, and Barry Kamens, who is now a judge in Manhattan, who's a devotee of comedy. And I think we'll do another one at the Friars Club that we'll do in planning tonight, perhaps, for the spring. And I think law and justice have always been mocked, have they not? Has justice, from English tradition, has justice not always been mocked when it has given itself to excesses?
Well, it's serious business what goes on in the court system, and people who really aren't involved in the courts, they often don't understand how court processes work, and certain results are perplexing to people, and understandably so. So we can dish it out in the court system, so we have to take it. If people want to mock us for certain things that we do, I say, we have to be able to handle it. We make mistakes, and we have to be open to criticism. But at the same time, I think what we really need to have is a respect for the system. That's the most important thing. People have to understand that we have the greatest system of justice in the world here in the United States. It's very flawed. We make a lot of mistakes, but it's better than any other system anyplace else. And I hope that anyone who makes fun of us, as I sometimes do, does it in the context of understanding what a great system it is.
I was just seeing Pat Cooper interviewing Lisa Lampanelli. Lisa Lampanelli did the roast of Pat Cooper the other year, and one of her classic lines is, well, now that we have a black president, that's just great. His motto is change. All we need is another black man asking for change. And, comedy pushes the edge. Comedy may make people nervous, but its job is to push the edge. Is it the same way for comedy about justice? In England, of course, if you made comedy about the wrong judge, you ended up in the dock. And then you had Gilbert and Sullivan, who did so many great operettas about comedy about their judges. And would you consider them one of the great pioneers, like the great authors of the same time period that allowed comedy to proceed to the lengths it is now about judges?
Well, I don't think we need to go back that far to make fun and laugh at the judges and the court system. There's plenty of contemporary humor available. Some of the most notorious cases that people have watched on television lends itself to comedy. And as I say, we have to be able to deal with that. I remember Johnny Carson on his TV show during the O.J. Simpson trial mocked the judge. Judge Ito in that case. He had a group called the Dancing Itos, and they would come out and perform on his show. It's serious business, and as I say, we need respect for the process, but at the same time, we can handle it with humor. I mean, humor is a vital part of our society, and there's no reason why people can't laugh at the things that go on in court, and also laugh at the judiciary. And I make fun of myself too. I try not to take myself too seriously, even though I know what I'm involved in is very important and very serious business.
Now, you mentioned Ed Koch as someone instrumental in your appointment and background, and he's of course noted for a tremendous sense of humor and has participated in Prize Club events and other events. But can he take it? Is he somebody who can take it? I don't know if he can take it. I don't know if as mayor he was able to take it. He wanted to know how he was doing positively. Was he somebody who really wanted to know the negative points of view? And was he somebody, he certainly was given to satire, but was he somebody in your experience who could take a good laugh at his expense?
Well, I wasn't a confidant of Ed Koch. He obviously had a sense of humor. I mean, he appointed me to the bench. I mean, that obviously shows he had a sense of humor. But the bottom line is, everything I know about the man is that he could dish it out and he could take it. And, I have the greatest respect for Ed Koch. One of the great things that he did as mayor was to appoint judges strictly on the basis of merit. Didn't matter what party you belonged to. Didn't matter, what your views were about issues. He was only issuing one thing, and that is, would you be a good judge? And he set the standard. I'm happy to say that our current mayor, Mike Bloomberg, has followed that and appointed judges on a nonpartisan basis. And there are very few political leaders out there who have done that. And so you won't find me saying anything bad about former Mayor Ed Koch. I think he was a great mayor.
I'm not looking for anything bad, especially at the end of the year. Why do you look at me and think I'm looking for something bad?
I don't know. I think you probably would like me to say something that will be controversial. And
never!
And
me? Looking for something? No, what? Come on.
Well, I'm glad then we're on the same page. Let's move on from Ed Koch to something else. You got something else that you want to ask me about?
Yeah, let's move to Mayor Bloomberg. No, listen, as a judge, you've handled more than your share of serious matters. And let's concentrate on this year. Review your year. You've been in the papers on a regular basis. I can't think of any judge that has had so many cases profiled in the news and the papers as consistently and as positively, with the results and the handling of the court as yourself. That's why you're known as a teaching judge, as a mentoring judge, why you're sought out by the courts to teach everybody in the Judicial Institute. What are your highlights this year in terms of unusual trials and of unusual attorneys?
Well, first of all, let me just correct one thing you said. I don't think I'm in the papers that often. I don't seek publicity, and there are many of my colleagues who try, equally important or more important cases than I do. I've been given, some very serious cases to try. This past year, I've tried multiple homicide cases. One case involving the shooting death of 3 individuals, another case involving the shooting death of 2 individuals. Death can be very gratuitous in these homicide cases, and it's sometimes amazing what can prompt an act of violence. particularly with young people today, they walk around with guns, and if they get upset about something, they don't like the way you look at them, or something you said to them, or something that you have done to one of their friends, it's very unfortunate that they will not hesitate to take a gun out and shoot you. And that's what's been involved in several of my cases. And it's much more widespread than I think we would like to recognize, that the level of violence is so great, and it's based on something so inconsequential as a bad word or a look in the wrong way. And I don't really know what the answer is to that. I do know that when these cases are tried, the young people involved, who can be 18, 19 years of age, are facing a life of imprisonment for their one gratuitous act of violence. It's very sad.
I know you can't talk about cases on appeal, open cases. Are most of the cases that result in a guilty verdict appealed, or are there any that just accept their fate and leave it at that?
Most defendants in criminal cases plead guilty. I think the statistic is around 90%. And those that plead guilty usually in New York waive their right to appeal. That means they give up the right to appeal in their cases. So there is no appeal when a defendant pleads guilty in the majority of cases. Those defendants who are convicted after trial generally will appeal their verdicts, unless they got a favorable verdict. Sometimes they're convicted of a lesser crime and they're content with the verdict and the sentence. So in those cases they might not appeal, but generally trial verdicts of guilty are appealed.
I was just at an extremely interesting program, the Judicial Institute, sponsored by the Franklin Williams Commission, which in part gave birth to our organization, Blacks and Jews in Conversation, of which you've been part, on gang and youth violence and sexual abuse. And they had a novel approach which seemed to indicate that there's a way to get into the prisons and into the incarceration places and try and rehabilitate at least some fraction of gang members in an approach that regards the gang not as a group of violent, prone people, but as a society. And do you see any potential to this, based on your experience on the trial?
Every effort has to be made to dissuade young people from getting involved in gang violence. Once they're in gangs, I think it's very tough. I think the better answer is to get them involved in activities before they hook up with a gang. I know from my own experience that team involvement can be very important for young people. It takes the place of the gang. Every day they get involved in practicing with their teammates and bonding with their teammates, and athletic activity is very helpful for them. It can be an outlet for their emotions and whatever anger they might have. So we have to do whatever we can. Once they're in gangs, obviously programs have to be tried, but we have to focus on keeping young people out of gangs and not making it attractive for them to get involved in gang activity.
How realistic are the TV shows and the movies that depict the justice system and the famous trials? How realistic are the books that are written about potential trials, the fiction as well as the nonfiction? Do they create a fantasy world? Do they make it a world that you could grasp quickly when the reality is far different? Is there any point to watching them for those who are interested in the real world of the legal drama?
Well, as strange as some of the fact patterns are on the TV shows and in the movies and books, I can tell you that the cases that we hear in court often involve also very bizarre facts that you would never expect. So the old saying that truth is stranger than fiction is absolutely true. There's nothing they can make up that you wouldn't find in the court system. Certain things they depict are very realistic, but some of it is not. For example, if you watch the show Law and Order, when a defense lawyer makes a motion to suppress evidence, it's regarded as some sort of dramatic gesture by defense counsel. The motion is served outside of the courtroom on the district attorney. It makes it seem like it's going to be a very difficult matter for the district attorney to handle. I mean, motions are formal and commonplace in the practice of law, nothing unusual. On a program like CSI, where the investigators get a call from the lab while they're investigating a case, telling them, oh, we've matched a hair fiber and we found fingerprints at the scene and DNA. Nothing could be further from the truth. Laboratories don't generally do testing during the investigation by the police. The lab's tests usually take place after an arrest and while the prosecution is involved. And they don't call anybody. The lawyers have to call the lab to find out exactly what's happening. So, that's unrealistic also. You never see jury selection depicted on television or in the movies. A very important part of most criminal trials. It's a time-consuming process and not that exciting. But in other respects, it is very realistic. The way the lawyers work, how the cases are developed by the investigators, the rights that defendants have, and how they're respected or treated by the police. So there is an element of reality. But if you really want to see how court cases are handled, you can come to court. I mean, our courts are open. You can come in and watch a trial anytime, and you'll get a good idea of what cases are like, and some of them are very fascinating.
In 25 years on the bench, you must have seen remarkable changes, not just in the composition of the judges and in the juries and in the court facilities, but in the very methodology of the trying of a case and in the cases that come before you. What are some of the highlights?
Well, in New York, there have been dramatic changes during the 25 years I've been on the bench. First of all, jury service has totally changed. When I started, many people had exemptions from jury duty, so everyone was trying to get out to join those who had the exemptions. Now virtually nobody has an exemption. Everybody must serve. And I've had cases where judges and police officers and lawyers served as jurors. Another difference has been in the sentencing. When I started, we had what we'll call indeterminate sentences, which means when a defendant was sentenced, he got a range of sentences and he didn't know exactly how long he was going to serve. That's been replaced by determinate sentencing for most serious cases, where it's a definite term of imprisonment, and it's higher, the amount of time that people have to serve now than they did before. We had the death penalty for a period of time. That turned out to be a failure. It wasn't applied proportionately throughout the state, and it turned out to be pretty wasteful as far as the utilization of resources was concerned. So the death penalty came about for a while, and then it is no more in New York. So those are some of the basic changes. We've developed specialized courts. Chief Judge Kay, who just retired this year, instituted special drug treatment courts and domestic violence courts to approach crime with a different mentality than just criminal prosecution. And those courts have been somewhat effective in dealing with these problems.
I think the Israeli army in Gaza is applying the death penalty fairly effective right now until European cowardice got the better of them. But if you were to change one thing about your job, besides meeting me, what would it be?
Well, I have to tell you that if there's any judge watching this program now, the judge is going to want me to give this answer. If there's one thing that I could change, it would be the salary of the judiciary. Many of your viewers may not know this, but the judges in New York State have gone without a pay raise for 10 years. Not even a cost of living raise during that period of time. So that we're at a point now where virtually all of the experienced lawyers appearing before us are making more money than we are. It's a travesty. Everyone says that the judges deserve a raise, but it's just not happening for various political reasons. So I love my job. I wouldn't change it or trade it in for any other job in the world, but the fact of the matter is that is the one thing that really needs to be changed, the salary of the judiciary.
If there is somebody watching, and there are plenty because this is an educational network, it's public access, and so is our organization, Blacks and Jews in Conversation. So of the many watching who would like to be involved in the legal system, of those who have been mentors, those who have been interns, and you've been most gracious in accommodating that, what would you advise them as far as learning about the judicial system?
Well, in New York, you have to practice law for at least 10 years to become a judge, and there's two ways you can become a judge, either to be elected or appointed by either the governor or the mayor of New York City. So obviously, you need to practice law and build up your resume, get a good reputation. And in light of the salary that we're making, I would say make sure you paid off all your student loans before you hit the bench. But it's a wonderful career. I see a lot of young people who come to the court. We have school programs where young people come in, and they're all interested in what it means to be a judge, and many of them indicate a career objective of becoming a judge. So it's a wonderful profession. I can't say enough about it. I've been very lucky to be a judge, and I've really enjoyed it, and I encourage young people to pursue a career in the law, particularly public service law, and to aspire to become judges.
One of the goals of our organization over the last 15 years has been to show peers to the students that we've traversed before the country of all different nationalities, Hispanic, Asian, Black, Jewish, judges of their ilk and background and religion and national origin on the bench. And we've succeeded in doing that. Besides writing comedy and speaking and lecturing and judging, what else do you do? We have about a minute left. What else do you do, and what would somebody need to know who's going to appear before you in court?
Well, I've gone out to the schools and for career days to speak to the young people. I have many school groups that come through my courtroom, and I definitely make an effort to spend some time with them. I have the young people sit in the jury box to experience what it's like to be a jury. I answer all their questions. I let young people come up to my bench and sit at the bench and feel what it's like to be a judge. I think we all have a responsibility in public service to encourage young people to pursue these careers. And as I say, I'm very privileged to be in this job. I don't take anything for granted. And I look forward to community service, community involvement. It's one of the reasons why I'm doing your show today, Shannon, is to participate in a very worthwhile organization and communicate the information that may be helpful to others in the community.
Well, let's say I'm showing up tomorrow as a freshling attorney in your court. What should I not do?
Well, don't show up late. That's the first thing. Make sure you're on time. I have a reputation as a very punctual judge. The second thing is don't waste my time once you do show up. Make sure you know what you're talking about. Don't misrepresent anything. I only appreciate honesty and candor, and vigorously represent your side. But don't leave the courtroom without your integrity intact. That's the most important thing when you appear before me.
Thank you very, very much, Honorable Allan Marrus. Iris, a very happy, healthy New Year to all our listeners and to you and to the court system. And 2009 should be ushered in with perhaps I should do something additional in my line of work, because I'm never coming back to your courtroom again after those remarks. And but one thing is
punctuality, particularly for you, Shannon.
We have integrity here at all times on M&N.